Welcome to this Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival event, and welcome to Aberystwyth. Croeso i'r digwyddiad Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival hwn, a chroeso I Aberystwyth. Aberystwyth, the cultural capital of Wales, home to Aberystwyth University and the National Library of Wales, once home to Welsh princes. The Biarritz of Wales is the jewel in the crown of Cardigan Bay's stunning coastline and home to hugely successful TV drama Hinterland. And now, the streets that have become familiar to fictional D.I. Mathias's many fans are getting ready to welcome celebrities from the worlds of crime fiction and crime drama, because Aberystwyth is home to Wales's first ever international crime fiction event, Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival. During the early May bank holiday weekend of 2022, Aber, as the town is affectionately known, will play host to a multitude of events that will offer something for every fan of crime fiction and drama. Internationally successful authors will entertain and meet readers in historic buildings. Pub quizzes will bring together authors and readers. Writing workshops, meet the agent sessions, and informal readings will help encourage and develop new writing talent. And in sparkling celebration of new Welsh talent, a champagne reception for Crime Cymru's first crime novel competition winners. This will be an Aberbank holiday weekend like no other. So, come for the crime fiction and take Cymru home in your hearts. Rydym yn edrych ymlaen yn fawr iawn at eich croesawu I Aberystwyth ac I Geredigion.
Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome to this Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival event. It's billed as Meet the Guv'nors, or as we've also called it, putting on an international crime fiction festival. What could possibly go wrong? So on behalf of Crime Cymru and our festival partners, Aberystwyth Town Council, again, welcome to panel number 19 of Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival online. I hope you've been able to join us for previous events this week, and there's still some more to come this evening. I'm Jacky Collins, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to this event. Now, again, if you've been watching, you'll know that at each panel, we've been featuring an independent Welsh bookshop. And we noticed that we didn't have a bookshop for this panel. But before we came on live, we thought there is another bookshop that we should mention. And that bookshop is Storyville Books in Pontypridd, just opening. And again, please give them your support for any of the books that you still might not have got hold of from this festival's events. Why not give some support to a new independent bookstore opening up? That's Storyville in Pontypridd. We will be taking audience questions again. Amy will be in towards the end of this session with your questions. So do please send those in, write those in there in the YouTube chat. So for this session, I'm joined by two fabulous authors, but perhaps more importantly for our time together now, the co-chairs of Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival. And that's Alice Hawkins and Matt Johnson. So Alice, let me welcome you first. Good afternoon, Alice. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Jacky.
Yes. Are you surviving?
Oh, just about. I was nearly late for my own event just now. I was having a little kip and my alarm failed to go off. Or rather, because my alarm never fails, it must have been some problem in my own brain. But yes, here I am.
Here you are. And we're going to talk in so much detail about this week and what's to come. But then I think we should go as that great Scandi crime drama says, everything goes back to the beginning, the bridge. So we'll go back to the beginning and see where it starts. Just to introduce you a little bit, if people aren't familiar with you with regard to your writing. So Alice is a CWA Historical Dagger shortlist author. She's published 4 books in the Teifi Valley Coroner historical crime series, featuring Coroner Harry Probert Lloyd and his assistant John Davis. And if you were with us earlier in the week, you'll know that there is a 4th book on the way. And I'm going to ask Alice to tell us a little bit about that. And Alice has also written novels set in the medieval period or partly in the medieval period. So thank you, Alice, for being here. And I wonder if we could get your illustrious partner in crime, Matt Johnson, in with us now. And look at that. Hello, Matt. How are you doing? Yeah, is merchandise...
I'm very well.
Do we have merchandise available?
No, this is a one-off that I purchased online for this week, for this event specially, just for a bit of a novelty value to see if it would work. But I don't know if you can read that.
Yeah.
It's called a product placement. I've noticed all these people putting their books behind them. Mm-hmm. So I decided that I was going to put Crime Cymru to the front. There it is.
Well done, sir. Now, again,
if you don't mind, it's extremely warm, so I'm going to take it off now.
Because it's only going to get warmer as I put the thumb screws on and, we get down to what this has all been about. But before we do that, Matt, let me just tell the viewers about your writing. In 2018, after just 2 years as a published author, Matt was voted at number 22 in the W.H. Smith list of all-time best crime writers. Now, I think that's amazing after 2 years of writing. That is awesome.
I thought it was a mistake. when I saw the list, I thought, oh, hell, there's another Matt Johnson.
It's not me. It's you. Matt's first novel was the 2016 John Creasy CWA Dagger-listed Wicked Game. And that novel was also listed by Amazon UK as the highest rated rising star novel of that year. Matt's produced 2 further books in that series. And there's this other piece that I've read about you, Matt, that I'm keen to ask about. Nothing to do with the festival and nothing to do with your writing, but the fact that you're a keen biker. I had no idea. No idea. A 99 Harley Davidson Fat Boy.
Yep, it's a pride and joy that sits in my garage. It comes out on holidays and high days, and never when it's raining, because it's not allowed to get wet. The chrome still shines like it was new. It's heavily customized, stage 3 conversion, goes like shit off a shovel. Oops,
please.
It's given a few sports bikes a surprise at the traffic lights, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Fortunately, I was taught how to ride properly, thanks to the police, when I was a traffic cop in my early 20s. And those valuable lessons have saved me many times when I've been riding the bike. And now, instead of riding fast bikes, I just like to ride for comfort and for pleasure. And nothing gives me greater pleasure than to head down the Hags of the Valleys Road to the Gower, to go to Verdi's, to buy an ice cream, and then head up into the Brecon Beacons on the bike. It's just wonderful. Very lucky. That
sounds absolutely beautiful. Even you just talking to us about I can feel the wind, in the hair, well, through the helmet, one should say.
It's got absolutely nothing to do with getting dressed up in leather.
Okay, moving swiftly on before we go into, And if people have been watching, we know that it is custom and practice to have that little elevator pitch. And although we're going to be talking about the festival, I really would be grateful if both of you, and Alice, if we start with you, because you've both got books in the making that we've not talked about in the festival so far. So, Alice, what's next, and when will it be with us?
What's next? Okay, so as you said earlier on, it'll be number 4 in the Tyvie Valley Coroner series. I think the scheduled publication date is September the 19th. The 19th. I haven't practiced the elevator pitch for book 4. As you know, I did book 3 yesterday when you interviewed me and Irsa. But I'll have a go. So book 4 starts when Harry Harry's preferred medical witness, Dr. Benton Reckitt, who is a notable eccentric and loves a bit of autopsy, which was very unusual in those days, turns up at his house and says, you've got to come, there's been a really interesting sudden death. And Harry thinks, oh gosh, only to Benton Reckitt is sudden death interesting. It turns out that this is the sudden death, unexpected but natural, apparently, death of a young woman. Nevertheless, Harry is suspicious because her father is clearly hiding something. And as they investigate what exactly he might be trying to keep hidden, various other things become clear. I'm not going to say any more for fear of spoilers, but one of the things which surprised me when I sat down to begin the editing process on the book was I didn't think that lockdown. I wrote it entirely within lockdown. Started in April last year and finished just before Christmas. I didn't think lockdown had affected me at all in terms of my writing, but actually what I discovered was that I'd written a book about people who lived in a very claustrophobic situation, who were mistrusting anybody who came in to their environment and who chose to believe what they wanted to believe rather than scientific evidence. And if those aren't things which come from last year, then I don't know what it is. So clearly I was very affected by the whole pandemic situation. So.
And do you have a date, Alice, of when that might be with us?
September the 19th should be.
Yeah. And do we have a title? I
was just going to say the working title, which I think my publishers are happy with, it's Not One of Us, which kind of refers to that whole business. Who are you to be coming into our community?
Yeah, thank you, Alice. Thank you for sharing that with us. Matt, what have you been busy beavering away with?
Well, when lockdown first hit us and the streets became quiet and everywhere became quiet, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have to say, as time has worn on, the novelty has worn off. During that time, I've painted the house, painted the shed, done some decorating, fixed the garden. Yeah, I even washed the car twice. So I figured that once I'd got all that out of my way, I really ought to get down to what I'm supposed to be doing and doing some writing. It was, I think, like many of the authors I've been listening to throughout the course of this festival, people's concentration spans were affected by the threat of what was going on around us. I was no exception. It was surreal. I remember when I first listened to the announcement that the country was going into lockdown. It was a week after my birthday. Just been celebrating, just been out, and then a week later, it's being announced that we've got all stay indoors and we're about to be threatened by this disease, which actually could potentially kill hundreds of thousands of people. It was a really weird word. And so like many, I found it difficult to focus. But I ploughed on. The first 3 books that I wrote, Wicked, Game, Deadly Game and Endgame, were effectively a trilogy. Telling a lengthy spy crime thriller story. What I decided to do this time was go for a standalone. I decided to keep the character, Robert Finlay, but put him into an entirely different situation. It's a book that I've always wanted to write, even before I started the first one. A book that I thought I'd never get the opportunity to write. because it's about a subject that's particularly close to my heart, and that is about the exploitation of young women in the military, particularly the sexual exploitation of young women. It's a very contemporary subject, but it's something that's been going on for many years. It's a very sensitive subject. I spent probably a year and a half researching, traveling, interviewing people who'd been victims of things like that, and learning what were truly quite harrowing stories from them. And I reached a point where I thought, you know, I feel a tremendous burden of responsibility to get these people's stories down in a novel which tells the kind of thing that's really going on. It was hard work. It took me another 18 months to write it. It was quite an emotional roller coaster. I finished it 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And when I say I finished it, I finished I think it was the 7th edit. Because effectively our literary agents are acting as editors for us these days, because the standard of submissions to publishers has gone up so high that agents are acting like as your gatekeepers, and they are doing an awful lot more editing than they used to do in the past. Fortunately, my agent James is very good at editing, very observant, come up with some great ideas. I cursed him sometimes, I can tell you, when he'd come up with an idea and I think, oh no, that's a really good idea, I'm going to have to change it. So anyway, I got it done. And at the same time, I'm working on a non-fiction book. It was something that came about through the fiction writing. And it came about because in 1984, I drove the ambulance escort that took WPC Yvonne Fletcher to hospital on the 17th of April 1984. And the PC who was with her at the time, a chap called John Murray, throughout the last 36 years has been going through the most incredible lengths to try and bring justice for Yvonne Fletcher, to try and bring people who were involved in the conspiracy to murder that day to justice. John's is an incredible story. John doesn't have the ability to write it. John approached me and said, would I be prepared to write the story of the shooting of Yvonne Fletcher? So I've agreed. I've written it. I've done the outline now. I've written the first 2 chapters. And again, because it's a subject that's personal to me, because Yvonne was a friend of mine, it's been a tough job, but it's something I'm thoroughly enjoying doing.
Sounds wonderful, Matt. And again, the ability for both of you, because I know Alice, I know you have another job. So the combination of writing, other responsibilities, and then, you know, and then we come to this thing, this festival. And I just want to say, you know, for my part, thank you so much for what you've put together. It's been a most amazing week. I know we've not been in Aberystwyth, but it's almost felt like we were there. There's been a real feel, and I think, you know, that the video at the beginning really gives you that sense of being, that sense of place. And even though we're not, we are. But let's go back. Alice, talk to us about the inspiration for this crazy venture.
I think you have to go back to the foundation of Crime Cymru as an organisation, as opposed to a festival. And Matt and I are 2 of the 3 co-founders of Crime Cymru. I first met Matt and our co-founder Rosie Claverton at Crime Fest in Bristol, one of the big crime fiction festivals in Britain, in 2016. Didn't say anything to them then, but I had already started thinking that being a Welsh crime writer is a lonely occupation, because it's very difficult to get your fiction set in Wales published. There's a huge prejudice still against Welsh crime writers who set their fiction here, not just crime, all writers who set their fiction in Wales. There was a thing in the bookseller recently encouraging an article about publishers encouraging children's authors to, and I quote, be less Welsh, and to set their fiction somewhere else. So I was very aware of that, and I thought, look, what we need to do here is start putting Welsh crime writing on the map. But before we can do that, we need to get Welsh crime writers together. So at Cardiff Book Festival in 2016, I asked Matt and Rosie if we could meet. And I pitched the idea to them. I said, look, I've had this crazy idea of getting a collective, an organisation, a group of crime writers who have an association with Wales. Either we live here or we were born here. We identify as Welsh in some way. Getting us together for mutual support, to help doing social media, retweet each other's stuff and all this kind of thing. And am I going mad? Is that a sensible idea? Fortunately, they both thought that this was an idea whose time had come. So we started getting in touch with as many other crime writers as we knew. And to cut a long story short, in July 2017, half a dozen of us met to thrash out exactly what form Crime Cymru would take, and to get some sort of skeleton of the constitution. And I think right from the beginning, certainly, I think Matt might have been the first person to mention the idea of us putting on a festival. Matt's always been very ambitious. I think at the beginning, I was probably more, let's just be for mutual support and all of that. And Matt was like, no, we need to do this. So Crime Cymru as an organisation has three aims: to support crime writers in and of Wales, to develop new crime writing talent in Wales, and maybe we could talk about that a bit afterwards. We have another new initiative, and to promote Welsh crime writing, Welsh culture and Wales to the wider UK and internationally. And we've been concentrating on the first one of those for the last, for the first 3 years. Let's get a good supportive community together. We put on a few little things. We did a day of crime fiction at Crickhowell Literary Festival. We partnered with Cardiff Central Library in 2018 to put on a whole weekend of crime fiction events, which was great. And then in our AGM last year, which of course was via Zoom, we took the slightly strange decision at that time that now was the time to launch our major international crime fiction festival. Partly because of Zoom, actually, because suddenly we were all able to get together. I mean, some of us, though we're Welsh, we live elsewhere. I live just over the border in England. We've got members in Vancouver, Canada, in Venice, in California. And we were all suddenly able to be there. And I think that suddenly inspired us. Look, we could do something here. Let's try putting on an online festival next year, because nobody knows what it's going to be like in the real world, with a view then to putting on a real world festival in Aberystwyth in 2022. So then we had to go in search of funding and support and what have you. And I don't know if you want me to talk about why Aberystwyth and all of this.
Yeah, I would like to know about that, but would you hold that? I'm going to come back to you in a minute with that, Alice, on why Aberystwyth of all places. And I just want to ask Matt, the notion of hosting a festival, either online or, as it will be hopefully next year, in real life, were you ever concerned that it wouldn't happen? I mean, Alice talks about the drive that you have for these things, and when that idea was first mooted, what was your response inside? Not necessarily outside. What was your response inside?
Oh my God, what have I let myself in for? No, I thought the notion, the idea, was a great idea. I thought the practicalities of achieving it, particularly fitting it in amongst the demands of being a writer, was perhaps going to be a bridge too far. I wasn't sure. And one thing I was particularly concerned was that whilst we might be prepared to put in the effort, these things don't get done for free. If you're going to make it happen, and if you're going to make it happen to a reasonable standard, you're going to need some help. So I think, with the benefit of hindsight, I'd have probably said, if I'd known how much work was going to be involved, that it was several bridges too far. But what's happened is we've taken each step at a time. We've mastered each particular skill at a time. we've overcome each challenge and each hurdle at a time, and we've gradually got there. And what happens, we started as a very, very small, close-knit team with a sense of common purpose. We've grown into a not very big team, but still maintaining that sense of purpose. And what's happened is we've brought in people who, although they're members of Crime Cymru, they're not just authors. They're people that bring contributory skills to the table, who have enabled us to come about. We have Bev Jones, for example, who is particularly skilled at dealing with the press and publicity and that kind of thing. When we've got Nellie Williams, who's fantastic at networking and social media and things like that. We've got me, who's absolutely useless at the technical stuff, but had to learn to master it. But I'm always willing to have a go. And I'll be frank, I am the co-chair, but I defer to Alice in terms of creativity and ideas, and could we make this happen? And then the rest of us sort of gather around and say, I think we could.
Yeah, do you know, Matt, that you've just said something though that I think is really important for the time that we live in, and I wonder to what extent has COVID and our lives online made us braver in being willing to try things?
Oh, absolutely true. And you know, getting people together for meetings can be really hard. Getting people together for a Zoom meeting, an online meeting, has proved much less hard. And you can get things done and you can move on. And if you want to meet every week to thrash out problems and to move things on quickly, you can do that. When people are trying to juggle their calendars and their diaries to actually fit in with a physical meeting, travel to the meeting, get there, other things are conflicting with them, they can't do it. You say set aside half an hour for a quick Zoom meeting so we can chat, thrash out and make a decision or something, it gets done. And we've been able to move very, very, I think, relatively smoothly because we've had that opportunity that technology has provided. But I mustn't forget that no matter how much we had these ideas, we have had some fantastic help from you, as with your experience of Newcastle Noir, and also from the likes of Vanessa O'Loughlin, who writes as Sam Blake, who runs the Dublin Murder One. Now, between the two of you, we went to you and said, right, tell us what went wrong. What were the problems? Tell us the issues we're going to have to deal with. And so we hit the ground running in many ways because we had the benefit of others' experience who could come to our table and who were willing to lend their knowledge and their experience to help us avoid the mistakes that they'd made. And that meant things ran a lot more smoothly.
Again, for my part, it has been an absolute pleasure and delight. Just think it's rather magical what has happened, and the fact that Wales now has its own international crime fiction festival. I mean, I know we're doing this online, but this is a reality, and that is just, cause for celebration. So, Alice, here we are in Camry, in Wales, with a festival, but why Aberystwyth? I mean, there are other, maybe larger cities, other places that could have been chosen. Why there?
If I'm completely honest, I bullied the whole of the Crime Cymru membership into agreeing to have it in Aberystwyth. That's not a joke. I pitched Aberystwyth very, very hard at the AGM because a few of us had met before that to basically to discuss before we even put it before the membership. We wanted to know, are there a few of us who will do this? Yes. So it was Matt and myself and Catherine Stansfield, and I think you were there, Jacky. And I pushed very hard for Aberystwyth because people who live outside Wales probably won't know this, but there's a huge rivalry between North and South Wales. It's even linguistic. The Welsh is slightly different, the Welsh that's spoken in the South and the North. And we're always having a go at each other. And the only time we get together and stand, shoulder to shoulder is when other people are having a go at us. So I knew that to have it in Cardiff, which was perhaps the obvious place, would have incensed people in the North, quite rightly, because it's very difficult to get to Cardiff from North Wales. You have to go into England and all the way round. And similarly, if we had it somewhere in North Wales, like Bangor would have been, you know, an obvious place, the university town. So I knew that we couldn't really allow that to happen. Aberystwyth, if you think of it in terms of geography, if you were able to fold Wales in half, Aberystwyth would be on the fold. It is right in the middle. It belongs neither to North nor South Wales. As our little introductory video says, it is the cultural capital of Wales and has been forever. It has our national library. It's got museums. It has a huge cultural history and also a royal history, but a great social history as well. And of course, it has the university. It's also a town that's very used to accepting people. It's quite a multicultural place. You wouldn't think it somewhere on the extreme west coast of Britain, but actually, if you walk around the streets of Aberystwyth, you will find people of every different colour and creed. And I knew that it would be a place which would welcome hordes from around the world to come to our crime fiction festival. And we just had to have one in Wales. I mean, England's got 12, Scotland's got 5, Northern Ireland's got 1. Wales had to have one, because why should the people of Wales have to go to England or elsewhere to see their favourite authors? You know, it's about time that we had our own, not just to showcase Welsh authors, but to allow Welsh readers, Welsh crime fiction fans, to see their favourite authors on their own home turf.
And Jacky, Alice's faith in Aberystwyth was well placed, because when we started talking to them, the enthusiastic response with which we were received was absolutely fantastic. And not only was it an enthusiastic reception, they were good to their word, and we are immensely indebted, for example, to Aberystwyth Town Council, led by Charlie Kingsbury, who stumped up the money to enable us to put this festival on. Things like the production company that goes behind this, the organisation, the cost, the facilities, it can't be done for free. We would have struggled. And the support that they've had, they've not just paid lip service to the idea of having a literary festival in Aberystwyth. They've pitched in, and they will help the website design. And I think you'll agree the website is just super. That was done by an Aberystwyth-based company for us. The production, as I say, is being done by another Aberystwyth company. And so all these people have come together to be terrific. The introductory video, which you've just seen. Now, I put together a very homespun PowerPoint presentation as an idea, which I sort of pitched to our group, and it's okay. No. So we said, well, what could we do to make it a lot more plush and professional? Now, at that time, we were in touch with a chap called Matthew Jarvis. Matthew Jarvis is a member of the Society of Authors, and we met him at an SOA virtual meeting where we were introduced to him, and Bronwyn Davis from Literature Wales has also been very helpful. And Matthew put us in touch with Joe Smith. Joe Smith works in the film department of Aberystwyth University. And so we spoke again, a virtual meeting, spoke to Joe, didn't need to travel to Aberystwyth to do it, and said, we've got this rather crazy idea, Joe. Do you think you could do it? Well, what he produced for us was just fantastic. And then, of course, we got this wonderful video, and we thought, well, it's nice, it's pretty, it shows lots of lovely video of Aberystwyth, but we need somebody telling us what it's all about, telling us what the festival's all about. Who could do this? Well, Aneurin Hughes stepped forward. Aneurin Hughes, who plays Tom in Keeping Faith. Beautiful speaking voice, lovely. Alice wrote some words. He recorded it for us when it was put together by Joe Smith at the university, and we had to look at it. What I had 36 hours before the first event went live, so we didn't have a lot of margin for time. But we saw it was well. So it's been terrific. So I wonder if we'd picked an alternative to Aberystwyth, whether that would have happened. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I don't think it would. I really don't think it would. I think the thing I've always said in all our pitches to both to Aberystwyth organisations and wider, to Welsh organisations when we're thinking about support and financing is we don't just want to do this in Aberystwyth. It's not a nice, pretty backdrop. We want to do this with Aberystwyth. We want Aberystwyth to buy into this festival, for it to become their festival, and they really have. And one of the other reasons that I was so keen on Aberystwyth, I know Aberystwyth well, it's in my home county of Ceredigion. I know how interconnected everything is, and once you get a foot in the door and you know one influential person, you'll know everybody. And so it's proved. I mean, the woman who runs the website firm who developed our website, she's been invaluable in saying, oh, you need to talk to this person, you need to talk to this person. And Matt Jarvis at the university will say, oh, yeah, I'll put you in touch with so-and-so. This is how it works in Wales. And you and I know this, Jacky, because we have an association, even though you were brought up in Scotland and I was brought up in West Wales. Our parents live, 3 or 4 miles from each other? Near Newcastle Lemlin. I mean, when we realised this, listeners out there, we said only in West Wales.
Yeah, and I do believe, without wishing to sound too sort of yin-yangy, as I call it, I truly believe that things happen for a reason. All these different elements that have come together at this point in time, in order for this festival, in order to be able to celebrate Welsh crime writing and also crime writing from beyond, but bringing that to Wales. I just think that that's really, really important. Now, I've got a couple of questions that I really want to get in before we turn to audience questions. And I want to go to this notion of, we talked about all the other things that you both do. And Matt, I wanted to ask you, and this is not like a job interview or anything like that. Why do you think...
What are you saying? Do I want a project manager job?
Yeah.
No.
Should we take that? No, I don't know. I'm just thinking about the life skills that you've brought into this. I mean, we talked about, that close-knit group of people working together with various skills. What is it, Matt, that you think that you've added to this that's made that difference?
Well, I come from a military and policing background. I went through selections for jobs within the military and the police, which assess your leadership ability. So obviously, I've got to think to myself, you've got an ability to lead and to organise a group and to motivate and keep people going. But that, I would say, is not really the key skill that I've brought to the table. I think what it also gave me was the ability to take a step back and think about things pragmatically. I think to myself, right, okay, we've got these wonderful ideas. How are we going to make it work? And so you might describe it like Alice has brought the designer, I've brought the architect. So Alice comes up with the ideas, I go, hang on though, and then we get together and think, right, how are we going to make this work? And everything has gone through that kind of challenge, everything has gone through that kind of hurdle, everything's gone through that kind of process, and eventually we've come up with solutions, some of which haven't been perfect, some of which have worked better than others, but always we've been prepared to try. And simple things like when we were approaching the guests for who we wanted to come to the festival. At times we thought we were being over ambitious, but then we said to each other, well, what's the worst can happen? They say no. Yeah. So, and if they say no, have we lost anything? No. And again, within the author world, people have been tremendously supportive. It's amazing how many people have got Welsh connections as well, Jacky.
Isn't it? Just as Alice was saying. Yeah.
Even Lee Child. Even Lee Child. We're talking to Lee Child, most successful thriller writer in the whole of the world. Turns out his parents lived in Brecon. Well, who'd have thought it?
You see, this is what I mean. This was meant to be. You see, it all comes back. But thanks for that, Matt. That pragmatic aspect that you lend to this. I I think it has really made a difference, because ideas do need to be held in place and do need to be challenged. I think that is vital. Alice, what about yourself? What from the outside world have you brought into the delights of crime fiction to organise a festival?
Well, to start off, I'd like to say to Matt that actually he's doing himself down, because he does have ideas and he does have good ideas. And actually, I think we've learned a lot from each other. I've learned to be more pragmatic and to step back and to question my own ideas. You know, I don't want to present him as the doer pragmatist who's always saying, oh, that's not going to work. He comes up with ideas that I will then say, but have you thought about this? We are very good foils for each other. And I honestly don't think this festival would have worked if Matt and I hadn't got on so well together.
That's a fact.
Yeah, and being prepared to give sometimes and to take other time.
Yeah, I describe our conversations as like the building blocks of a pyramid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and eventually we work up and up and up until we reach that pinnacle, which is the idea we go with.
That's absolutely right. But in terms of the skills that I probably brought to the table at the beginning, I mean, one, I get very much, not from my professional background, but from my childhood and my parents' upbringing, because they were people who, if they wanted to do something, they did it if they possibly could. They didn't wait around for other people to move. You know, if something needed setting up, they would set it up. If something needed organising, they would do it. And they didn't make a song and dance about it, they just did it. And I grew up thinking, that's what you do. If you want something to happen, you don't go, oh, do you know what? It'd be nice if somebody did that. No, you do it. If you possibly can, if you have got the time, the talent and the, you know, the mad inclination, do it.
Jacky, I don't know if when Alice is talking about how well we get on, I don't know if you've noticed her office and my office.
Yeah, it's a little bit spooky, isn't it? It really is.
Green room earlier at the last event, we were in the green room beforehand, just saying hi to everybody. And Matt said, "Just step out of frame for a minute, Alice." And I was like, "Okay, but why?" He took a quick screenshot and he said, "I'm going to see how long it takes Jacky to notice."
You see, this is it. I'm too focused on you two.
Absolutely, but just to kind of finish that with the question. Sorry, yeah, this is how we get, isn't it? The three of us. I think I worked in the NHS for many years as a speech and language therapist, and that involves a lot of liaison with other professionals. It involves a lot of teamwork. It involves a lot of having ideas and then being prepared for other people to modify those ideas. I'm now working for the National Autistic Society, and again, that involves huge amounts of liaison, but also being incredibly determined that if something is right, that you will push it through if you possibly can. I mean, I know that I'm not universally loved by professionals in Monmouthshire, because I can be a bit of a pain in the neck supporting the families that I work with. Because once I've got an idea in my head, if I can possibly make it happen and take people with me, then I will. And I really, really want to say this, I've been fantastically fortunate in Matt. We've always got on since we started Crime Cymru, but you know, we've become very close during the last year. And yourself, Jacky, of course. And it's been a real privilege. It's been fantastic, you know.
I'm just a little bit worried though that my books haven't, you know, gathered as your books have. It's obviously there's a bit of magic missing here. No, I digress. I've got one last question before we bring Amy in with audience questions, and it's about the Crime Cymru first novel competition, because one of those, you know, main pillars is to champion, you know, crime writing in Wales, about Wales, that kind of thing. So Alice, Matt, what does it mean to have this element to the festival?
Well, I think we first broached the idea, and this is one of the times where I have to defer to Alice's memory, actually, because she's right. Actually, this was my idea, but I hadn't got the first idea how to bring it about. I'd like the idea of there being a Welsh prize. I've been quite envious of what happens in Scotland with things like the McIlvenney Prize and things like that. And, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if we have an equivalent for Welsh writing, particularly because I might actually stand a chance of being in the short running for it. But seriously, so I muted the idea to Alice, and well, Alice will now tell you what happened. Fantastic.
So we knew that Matt and I didn't have time to make that happen, as well as the festival. So as Crime Cymru, we have a closed Facebook page where we all communicate. So I put up a plea on there, really. Right, we all agreed at our AGM that we would take this prize forward. I need somebody to head a little working group to actually make that happen. And the silence was utterly deafening, as you can imagine. So I thought, hold on, actually, I'm asking people to do something in a vacuum here. So I went away and I put together a job description, effectively. This is what it would entail. And then wonderful, wonderful woman that she is, Catherine Stansfield, another founder member of Crime Cymru, stepped up and said, yes, I'll do that. And she has done the most magnificent job. And I know you again have been involved in this, Jacky. You very, very kindly volunteered to be on that little working group. And yourself and Kath and Alison Leyland, who's also done marvellous work as our translator for everything. I mean, I've looked in on meetings and correspondence occasionally, but you three, and primarily Kath, I take my hat off very much to the three of you for having put that together. And if people want to know about our Crime Cymru first novel competition, if you go to our website, that's crime.cymru, no orgs, no anything, just crime.cymru. There's a drop-down menu, there's a tab saying first novel competition. You don't have to have written the whole novel, it's the first 5,000 words. The only other stipulation is you have to live in Wales. At the point where you submit your novel, you have to live in Wales. So go and look at the T's and C's on our website. And there's a in English and an in Welsh prize. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, there's one Welsh prize and one English for people. I wanted to call it the Johnson Prize, as in the equivalent in Scotland is the McIlvenney, but for some reason the name Johnson isn't terribly popular in the United Kingdom at the moment. Yeah, I wonder why. Indeed. Anyway, I'm sure the audience have had lots of questions. We'll just move swiftly on. That's the best way. I wonder if, again, somebody who has been just the most amazing continuity throughout this festival, Amy Williams, I just, please come in, Amy. Let's see you again. You are just awesome. Honestly, your stamina is tremendous. Thank you for all that you've been doing with this festival. And I wonder, do you have questions from the audience for us?
I do have questions. And honestly, it has been a pleasure to be a part of. It has been a very busy week, but the best week. I've loved every single minute, and just watching audience members interact in the chat and just share how much fun they've had, how much they've loved it. Has just been wonderful. So, questions. Yes, we do have questions. The first one that we have, and this one came in before we'd even started chatting, and this one is from Asim, and he would like to know what has been the most challenging part of organising the festival. Alice? First of all, can I say, Asim, I've seen your name on so many chats. Thank you so much for coming to so many of our events. That's much appreciated. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen. What's been the most challenging aspect? I think we've worried about, it depends whether you're talking about this year or next year, really. This year, the most challenging aspect has been to make sure that everybody knows exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. We were determined to give our authors, our visiting guest authors, the best possible experience. So that's been a major thing. But I think our overall worry this year really has been
how are we going to replicate what we do online this year in the real world next year in Aberystwyth? So we had so many meetings and trying to find the right people to talk to, because we're completely new at this. You know, we're not keyed into all the different networks that we need to be. So we've been starting at ground level. So that's been quite challenging. And the next big thing is going to be ongoing funding. We've got some from Aberystwyth Town Council, as Matt said, they are just superb, but we need other funding as well if we're going to make the success we want to make of Aberystwyth next year.
And I think the problem that you're going to have now is that you've set the bar so high.
Well, yeah.
So high. It has been such a phenomenal festival. What about you, Matt? What was the biggest challenge for you?
I think the biggest challenge for me was the deadline, 26th of April. I think when we started, we thought, oh, that's months and months and months away. No need to rush. And all of a sudden, you find yourself a matter of weeks away from the event starting, and there's still so much to be done. And we had to ramp up the effort. And as I mentioned earlier on, even like a matter of a few hours from the event, we were still waiting for things to come together. And it was such a tremendous relief when on the first event, when Sam from Hacker pressed the connect button and things went through and it worked and it looked okay. And it was, so this week, although it's been hard work, sorry, it's hard work monitoring and keeping your finger on the pulse to some extent. The preparatory work against a tight timescale was quite pressure. Didn't allow an awful lot of time for doing much other leisure activities, shall we say.
I can imagine. And how did you decide what authors that you wanted to have at the festival?
I think we all chipped in, actually. We all had people we knew.
As I mentioned earlier, we wanted to be ambitious.
Yeah.
So we're looking to create Wales's first international crime fiction festival. For that to be successful, we've got to have authors prepared to come to it who are going to draw an audience. We have a secondary ambition, which is to enable the careers of Welsh authors. And so we want the opportunity for Welsh authors to benefit from exposure and to be able to network with the world's most successful authors. Are we going to get the world's most successful authors to come to Aberystwyth? Well, we asked them, and wonderful people that they are, you know, with very few exceptions, they said yes. And of course, that enabled us to create events where we could combine the best the United Kingdom has to offer with Wales's up-and-coming talent. And so we've created it initially that opportunity, and that opportunity will continue in the physical event next year.
I think what has been so lovely, so I've had the pleasure of sitting in almost every single one of the green rooms, so to speak, and the debriefs after, and just how supportive crime authors are, whether it's...
And we've had some huge names there, haven't we, Amy? And they are all wonderfully modest, unassuming, helpful, kind, supportive, and yet these gentlemen, these ladies are some of the best known names in the world, and they sit in this virtual room with us and chat away like old mates. Fantastic.
Yeah, it really has been a pleasure to watch that happen. Next question. This one's from Tony. And Tony is from Romania and would first like to say thank you for putting on such an amazing festival and bringing so much joy at this time. And I suppose it kind of goes back to a little bit of what you talked about earlier, was who first came up with the idea for the festival and what can we expect next year?
Oh, well, I'm going to get in quickly here because it was Alice. 100% Alice came up with the idea of the festival. I know she tried to give me the credit for it earlier on, but when she first muted the idea and said, I would quite like to have a co-chair with a view to possibly putting together a festival. It was, everybody backed off and said, oh, no, thanks very much. That sounds like terribly hard work. Eventually, she used some strong arm tactics in a brown envelope, and I was persuaded. So I decided to join in and follow in the wake that she has created.
Fantastic.
That's very kind. Basically what happened was I went to him separately and just asked. I said, I'd really, really like it if you would be my co-chair. I really would. So, and he's been the most magnificent support, I have to say. But in terms
as you probably realise, Amy, I like to make it fun too.
He does. Oh yeah, it's been great.
This is all about enjoying ourselves. We don't want to organise a literary festival and have it to be a task, have it to be something you're not enjoying. So I've really tried. That's perhaps another thing I bring to the table, Jacky, as we were talking about earlier. Is that this has got to be fun. We've got to enjoy this. And we don't want to make it stressful and unpleasant. We want to enjoy it. So and it's been a hard work, but tremendously enjoyable.
It has, and yeah, you do definitely bring that element of humour to things, Matt. Definitely. I was just going to talk about what our plans for next year are. Apart from obviously lots of wonderful interview panels, we are planning on the opening night of the festival. We're planning a dragon lantern parade through the streets of Aberystwyth up to the castle, which, as you will have seen on the opening video, overlooks the sea. We're planning a traditional Welsh noson lawen on Saturday night, where you eat, you drink, and people do acts, if you like. They put on a show. They do turns. That's the phrase I'm looking for. They might sing, they might tell a few jokes, they might play an instrument, you know. We will be hosting the Crime Cymru First Novel Prize Award ceremony, which is going to be a champagne reception. There will be a pub quiz, which will involve authors and members of the public. So there will be numerous opportunities for people to mix and mingle with our authors. And also, obviously, we'll have all the usual stuff of meet the agent and pitch to the publisher and do readings in bars and in bookshops. It's going to be a packed schedule, and we are going to need to recruit rather than strong arm quite a lot of stewards and volunteers in Aberystwyth. But already we're getting people saying, yes, I would like to help, which is fantastic.
It is, it's fantastic to hear. We have a question from Louise. I think this is a great question. And she asked, would you consider other online Zoom events in the future, as this format supports people with disabilities who maybe cannot travel next year?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, we don't have any fixed plans for further events during 2021, but we do plan to run smaller, probably individual sessions throughout 2021 to try and maintain the momentum ready in the build-up for the physical festival in 2022. Keep people interested, show them a little more about Aberystwyth, particularly when Aberystwyth opens. We'd like to show people about some of the facilities, the high street, the restaurants, the cafes. It's beautiful. The seafront. We've been unable to do that kind of filming at the moment, but we want to show that people in the run. So people will come to Aberystwyth and enjoy the Gŵyl.
Absolutely. If people keep an eye on our Crime Cymru Festival YouTube page, they'll see anything that we put up. But our aim is to run an online festival every other year. We're going to have a biennial pattern. So in the odd years, so 21, next one, 23, we'll be running online festivals. And in the even years, we'll run festivals in the real world in Aberystwyth. That's our aim at the minute.
Fantastic. And as we're chatting, we're still getting more questions through. So this one is from Karen. And Karen asks, why did you decide to use this format where attendees can only ask questions through the stream, through the comments, rather than live? So, for example, if everybody was in a Zoom together. That's
going to be a technical one, so that's going to fall to me. We experimented with different forms of technical platforms. The options available to us are Zoom, Zoom Pro, Zoom Webinar, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live. And then outside of those forums, there are a number of extremely expensive platforms that we could use. So we had to set our budget within what we could afford. We looked at Zoom Webinar. Unfortunately, Zoom Webinar has a top restriction of 300 participants. And we felt that certainly with some of the events that we were going to lay on, there was the potential for greater, and that was proved to be the case, because there's been many more than that people have registered for some of the events. So that ruled Zoom Webinar out. So that left Zoom linked with either Facebook Live or with YouTube Live. Now, the problem with Zoom linked with Facebook Live or YouTube Live is it means that audience participation isn't direct. They're not actually in the Zoom room as they are with us. It's something we discussed, something we realized that there was going to be a compromise, because we very much would like the opportunity to have direct audience participation, but the technology and the platforms didn't permit it within the parameters that we had available to us. We tried one. We did the author, the Crime Cymru author noir at the bar event, but the only way we were able to do that was by limiting the audience to a maximum of 85 people. That meant a much smaller audience, that meant a much smaller reach. It was nice, it was intimate, it was cozy, we had good audience participation, but unfortunately it didn't provide the networking and the reach that we were looking for.
Thanks, Matt. We have 2 questions from Jamie, and Jamie has a question for you, Alice, and a question for you, Matt, and then more specifically... Is that
Jamie the Valley All Black?
I mean,
because if it is, it's a shout out for him, and I've just seen what he's put on Twitter.
And the questions are more specifically about your writing rather than the festival. So I'll start with a question for you, Alice. Okay. Jamie says, there needs to be a TV series of the Tavy Valley Coroner.
Yes.
And Jamie suggested St Fagans as a location. What do you think about that?
St Fagans has got some great buildings which you would definitely need to draw on. Absolutely right. I would want it to be shot in the main, though, in the Tavy Valley, where the books are actually set. But thank you, Jamie. That is so, so kind. The problem is historical drama is incredibly expensive to do. So yes. But yeah, no, it would be great. It would be lovely to see Harry and John walking around on our television sets. It's yeah, and thank you for all your support on Twitter. You're very lovely to me.
And then the question for Matt. So the Robert Findlay series was a trilogy, but it feels like there are more stories there. Will we ever get more?
Oh, absolutely. As I mentioned at the beginning, I've just completed a standalone, which is an investigation that Findlay, because he's an ex-soldier, gets assigned to investigate as an allegation of some crimes at a military camp, and so he's sent there as an ex-soldier to investigate. And what he uncovers is the basis in the story behind the book. It's lovely, isn't it? The idea that Alice has talked about, to get your books work seen on television, fantastic. I think we've got to be realistic about it. It's not very likely. I know I've learned more about screenwriting in the last year because I've had the pleasure of working with Matthew Hall. Matthew and I were working on a pitch for a series which hopefully was going to come to television. We were like a week away, contracts were being prepared, money was being talked about, lockdown happened, boom, gone, nothing. Very frustrating for somebody who wants to break into that world at the moment to find that there is no platform. We're aware that it's wonderful to have your rights purchased for television and film, but how many of those actually make it onto the screen is less than 3%, I'm told. So it's very, very small. So it's exciting, it's nice. We're realist about it. We get on with what we enjoy doing. We get on what other people seem to think we're fairly good at doing. And it's very reassuring when they buy their books and say nice things about you. Television, okay. Let's keep our feet on the ground and say if it happens, it happens.
He is a pragmatist, absolutely. But he's absolutely right. I think it's less than 1%, actually.
Is it? That surprised me.
Yeah.
And I'm conscious of the time. So we have time for one last question, and this one's from Sian. And she asked, do you think that bringing together all of these amazing authors has created any future writing collaborations?
Well, you never know. You just never know. That's the beauty of these networking events. They are the starts of beautiful friendships. I mean, there would be no Crime Cymru if Matt and I hadn't met Rosie. And you never know what a chance meeting will bring, because you suddenly have these meetings of minds. So it'd be lovely to think that, wouldn't it? What do you reckon, Matt?
Well, it did occur to me that if the Andrew and Lee child arrangement doesn't work, that Lee might be looking at me as an alternative. but no. To be honest with you, I think the answer is probably no. Actually, I don't think when it comes to fiction that many writing partnerships work terribly well. I think as individual writers we work best on our own. I think the strength of writing relationship comes between an author and an editor, where an editor works with the author to tease ideas out of them, to help them polish their work and to help them to come up with alternatives, but leaves it to the author to do the writing. I would say probably most authors are going to stick doing it that way.
Maybe.
Brilliant. And that's all the questions we have. So I'm going to leave you with Jacky. Thank you both.
Thanks for the questions. They were great.
Yeah, thank you, Amy.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye, Ryan. Bye. Well then, where did that go? You see, doesn't time fly when you're talking about things that are just so wonderful and so exciting? Yeah. I mean, it makes me want to say, here's to 2022 and here's to meeting in Aberystwyth. Here's to the months that lie ahead and all that needs to go on to be achieved. But given what has happened in the previous 12 months, I have no doubt whatsoever that what is ahead is just going to be amazing. Alice and Matt, thank you so much for spilling the beans, as it were, and revealing about how things have gone. And if you will allow me, I just wanted to give a shout out to the person behind that Crime Cymru logo. I wonder, would he be so good as to say hello to us?
Come on, Sam.
Hello, how are we all? Thank you very much for having me during this festival. It's been a pleasure to be here on behalf of Hack Entertainment.
Oh, well done, Sam.
Yeah.
Sam has been an absolute stalwart and has kept us sane.
Yeah. Really appreciate it. Yeah, why not?
I'm assuming that people who've come to this event are keen to know about the progress towards next year's festival. We have a newsletter. If you go onto our website, the festival website, gŵyl.crimecymrufestival.co.uk, if you're there for more than a minute, you will be asked to sign up to our newsletter. So please do that, and then you'll be kept in touch with all the developments towards next year's festival.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And just to let you and other people know, we had 3,300 registrations for the certificate and nearly 18,000 visits to the website over the course of the festival, which has been absolutely incredible and way beyond what we expected, way beyond what we even hoped for.
Totally. So thank you all for watching. And again, thank you for your questions. We'll do that shout out again for Storyville Books in Pontypridd. Matt, Alice, see you in Aberystwyth next year, yeah?
See you in Aberystwyth. Thanks, Jacky.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.